At 40, Anna felt as though her life was one long, unchanging pattern. Every morning began with the same routine: coffee, silence from her husband Victor, and the familiar emptiness of their home. Their son, Alex, was already 17, with one foot out the door. He spent most of his time with friends, caught up in the whirlwind of teenage life. And Victor? Well, Victor was a presence that loomed over her existence, not with love or warmth, but with a sense of resignation she could no longer bear. Their marriage had started like many others, full of promise and passion. Victor had once been a man who could make her laugh until her stomach hurt, who brought flowers home just because, and who, at the time, seemed like the kind of man she could build a life with. But over the years, cracks had formed, and those cracks became chasms. His infidelities were the first betrayals. At first, she had cried and confronted him, demanded explanations and apologies. And for a while, Victor had played the part of the repentant husband, showering her with gifts and promises. But eventually, even her tears dried up. The years passed, and his absences became routine. Nights when he claimed to be working late turned into full weekends where he didn't come home at all. At first, Anna would call him, her voice shaky and pleading. Then she stopped asking questions. She stopped waiting up. She stopped caring. Except she hadn't truly stopped. Deep down, the betrayal gnawed at her. It wasn't the other women that hurt the most. It was the disregard, the knowledge that Victor took her for granted. She had become a shadow of herself, someone she barely recognized. One day, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the faint lines on her face and the sadness in her eyes. This can't be it, she thought. This can't be all there is to my life. She wanted more. She deserved more. But where would she even begin? At 40, she felt trapped, not just by Victor, but by her own fear of the unknown. What would people say if she left him? What would happen to Alex? How would she even begin to rebuild a life that had revolved around a man who didn't see her anymore? The tipping point came when she discovered Victor's latest affair. It wasn't the discovery itself that hurt. By now, she had almost expected it. What shocked her was how numb she felt. No tears, no anger, just nothing. That night, Victor came home late, reeking of someone else's perfume, and for the first time, she didn't ask where he had been. She simply watched him, and as he muttered something about a long day, she realized she was done. The decision didn't come in a dramatic flash, but rather as a quiet certainty. She no longer wanted to fight for Victor's attention or approval. She wanted to fight for herself. And then there was Mark. Mark was Anna's colleague at work. He had joined the company 6 months ago after a messy divorce. Unlike Victor, who always seemed larger than life and full of bravado, Mark was calm and thoughtful. He wasn't the type to dominate a room, but he had a quiet charisma that drew people to him. He always asked about Anna's day, remembered the little details she mentioned, and made her laugh with his dry sense of humor. At first, their conversations were purely professional, but over time, they began lingering at the coffee machine, exchanging stories about their lives. Mark shared anecdotes about his teenage daughter, who was going through her rebellious phase. And Anna found herself opening up about Alex and the struggles of raising a teenager. It felt easy, natural. She hadn't realized how much she missed simply talking to someone who genuinely listened. One day, after a particularly long meeting, Mark offered to walk Anna to her car. It was a small gesture, but it made her heart race in a way she hadn't felt in years. As they reached her car, he smiled at her and said, "You deserve more than you think, Anna. Don't settle for less." His words stayed with her, echoing in her mind long after she drove away. She hadn't told him about Victor or her failing marriage, but somehow, it felt like he understood. For the first time in years, Anna allowed herself to imagine a different life, one where she wasn't tethered to a man who didn't value her. But the thought scared her. Was it selfish to want something more at her age? Would she be able to let go of the life she had built, even if it was crumbling around her? The final blow came one evening when Victor's mistress called Anna. She didn't mince words. "Anna," the woman said, her tone smug, "you deserve to know that Victor loves me. He's only staying with you out of pity." Anna's chest tightened, her hands trembling as she gripped the phone. She wanted to scream, to hurl insults, but instead, she simply hung up. She sat in silence, staring at the walls of the home she had spent years trying to make warm and welcoming. The home Victor had turned into a battleground of lies and betrayal. When Victor came home that night, she was waiting for him. "We're done," she said calmly, her voice steady but firm. Victor blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" "I'm done pretending this marriage works. You can go to her, Victor. I'm giving you what you want." He laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "You've been threatening this for years, Anna. You're not going anywhere." But this time, she wasn't bluffing. She packed her things and moved out the next day. Alex, now old enough to understand, supported her decision. "You deserve to be happy, Mom," he told her. For the first time in years, Anna felt free. Moving into her own apartment was both terrifying and exhilarating. It was smaller than the house she had shared with Victor, but it was hers. She decorated it with soft colors and filled it with plants, creating a space that felt like a sanctuary. Mark helped her move, bringing over coffee and bagels as they unpacked boxes together. Their friendship deepened, and slowly, it turned into something more. Mark was patient, never pushing her for more than she was ready to give. He understood her wounds, her fears, and he made it clear that he was there to support her, not fix her. One evening, as they sat on her balcony watching the sunset, Mark took her hand. "You've been through so much, Anna," he said. "But you're stronger than you realize. And you deserve to be with someone who sees that." Tears welled up in her eyes, but for the first time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. Months turned into a year, and Anna found herself thriving. She and Mark became a couple, their relationship built on trust and mutual respect. Victor, meanwhile, had moved in with his mistress, but their relationship quickly fell apart. He called Anna one night, drunk and regretful, asking for another chance. "I've moved on, Victor," she said firmly. "And so should you." She hung up, feeling a sense of closure she hadn't expected. Victor had taken so much from her, but he wouldn't take her future. Anna's new life wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She and Alex grew closer, and she found joy in the little things. Sunday morning coffee with Mark, walks in the park, and the knowledge that she had taken control of her happiness. At 40, Anna had asked herself if it was too late to change her life. Now, as she stood in her apartment, surrounded by the love she had rebuilt, she knew the answer. It was never too late. Life with Mark was peaceful and steady. For the first time in years, Anna felt like she was no longer walking on eggshells. There were no sudden mood swings, no secret phone calls, and no suspicion lurking in the corners of her mind. She had found a partner who made her feel safe, cherished, and respected. But the echoes of her past still haunted her at times, creeping into her thoughts when she least expected it. One night, as she was cooking dinner, her phone buzzed. The name on the screen made her heart skip a beat. Victor. She stared at it, hesitating before picking up. "Anna," Victor's voice came through, slurred and heavy with alcohol. I needed to hear your voice." Anna closed her eyes, gripping the counter for support. "Victor, what do you want?" There was a pause, and then he began rambling, his words tinged with regret. "I made a mistake. You were always the one who kept everything together. I thought I wanted freedom, but it's all falling apart. She left me, Anna. I don't have anyone." Anna's chest tightened. She could picture him sitting in the dimly lit living room of the house they had once shared, nursing a drink and wallowing in self-pity. A part of her wanted to comfort him, to remind him that she had once been the one who held him up when he fell. But that part of her was smaller now, overshadowed by the woman she had become, the woman who had rebuilt her life and learned to value herself. "I'm sorry you're hurting, Victor," she said softly. "But I can't be the one to fix this for you. I've moved on. You need to do the same." He muttered something incoherent before the line went dead. Anna set her phone down, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't sad or angry, just relieved. This time, She wasn't letting the past pull her back. Despite Victor's attempt to re-enter her life, Anna felt more confident than ever in her choices. But his call had set off a ripple effect that began to impact other areas of her life. Alex, her son, who had initially been supportive of her decision to leave, was starting to show signs of resentment. "You're always with Mark now," Alex said one evening as they sat in the living room. "It feels like you've replaced Dad without even thinking about how it affects me." Anna's heart sank. She hadn't realized how much her new relationship might be affecting Alex. "Honey, that's not true," she said, reaching for his hand. "You'll always come first for me. Mark isn't replacing anyone. He's just part of my life now." Alex shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "I just don't get it. You and Dad were together for so long. How can you just move on like it was nothing?" "It wasn't nothing," Anna said gently. "It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But staying in a relationship that wasn't healthy, for me or for him, would have been worse. You'll understand someday." Alex didn't respond, but the tension in the room lingered. That night, Anna found herself lying awake, wondering if she had made a mistake. Was she being selfish? Should she have waited longer before introducing Mark into her life? Mark noticed her unease the next day. "Talk to him," he said. "He's young, and he's still processing everything. But he loves you, Anna. Don't let this sit between you two." Taking Mark's advice, Anna planned a day for just her and Alex. They went to the park, had lunch at his favorite burger place, and spent hours talking about everything. His school, his friends, his future plans. By the end of the day, Alex's walls had started to come down. "I guess I just miss how things used to be," he admitted as they walked back to the car. "But I get it now, Mom. You seem happy." "I am," Anna said, pulling him into a hug. "And I want you to be happy too." Just as Anna began to feel like her life was finally settling into a new normal, an unexpected letter arrived. It was from Victor. The envelope was thick, and her name was written in his familiar scrawl. She hesitated before opening it, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a long, heartfelt letter. Victor apologized for everything. The affairs, the neglect, the way he had taken her for granted. He admitted that he had failed as a husband and a father, and that losing her was the biggest regret of his life. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he wrote. "But I needed to tell you how sorry I am. I see now that I was the problem, not you. I wish I could go back and be the man you deserved, but I know it's too late for that." Anna read the letter twice, her emotions swirling. She had waited years to hear these words from Victor, and now that she finally had them, they felt hollow. They didn't change the past or erase the pain he had caused. And while she appreciated the sentiment, she knew she couldn't let it derail the life she had built. She folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. It wasn't forgiveness she needed, it was peace. And she had already found that. Mark's relationship with Anna had grown stronger over the months. He was patient with her, understanding that she was still healing from the scars of her marriage. He treated Alex with kindness, never trying to take Victor's place but always being there when Alex needed support. One evening, as they were cleaning up after dinner, Mark paused and looked at Anna. "Have you thought about what's next for us?" he asked. Anna set down the dish she was washing and turned to him, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" "I mean this," he said, gesturing between them. "I love you, Anna. And I want us to build something together. But I don't want to rush you if you're not ready." Anna's breath caught in her throat. She had been so focused on rebuilding her life and healing from the past that she hadn't allowed herself to think about the future. But as she looked into Mark's eyes, she realized she wanted that future with him. "I love you too," she said, her voice steady. "And I'm ready." A year later, Anna stood in her new home, a house she and Mark had bought together. It was smaller than the one she had shared with Victor, but it was filled with warmth and love. Alex had his own room, decorated with posters of his favorite bands, and he seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Alex looked at Mark and said, "You know, you're not half bad. For an old guy." Mark laughed, ruffling Alex's hair. "I'll take that as a compliment." Anna watched them, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had been so afraid to take that first step, to leave behind a life that no longer served her. But now, as she looked at the family she had created, she knew she had made the right choice. Victor had faded into the background of her life. He still called Alex occasionally, and she wished him well, but she no longer carried the weight of their failed marriage. She had let go of the guilt, the anger, and the sadness. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers. And as she sat at the table with the people she loved, she realized that at 40, she had found something she thought she had lost forever: hope.